did you know that in the past 300 years, we have cut down approximately 1.5 billion hectares of forests? That's more land than the entire United States of America, which is the fourth largest country in the world. But why? I mean, there are a couple of reasons. Because over the past years, the population has started to increase considerably. And more people means more food. And in order to grow this food, more land was required, which is why forests were cleared. Now, in the earlier days before electricity and LPG, wood was the main source of energy, and wood was used as fuel. Now, to construct cities, roads, industries, all of this required space, and forest land was cleared. Now, cutting down forest doesn't just remove trees, it affects everything living inside of them. Because forests are home to different animals, plants, insects, and microbes. And when forests disappear, animals and plants lose their home, insects go missing, food chains break, and apart from this, it also creates an overall imbalance in the environment. Now, apart from destroying forests, animals were also being hunted down at a dangerous pace for their skin. And this was again disrupting the population of these animals. Now, since all of this was happening at such a dangerous pace, the governing bodies decided that it's high time that we implement certain rules and regulations in the way we treat our natural environment and wildlife so that we can protect it. So, that is when national parks and wildlife sanctuaries were established. So, first up, let us understand what are national parks. Now, national parks are large protected areas which are created in order to conserve the natural environment and wildlife. Now, there are so many different kinds of national parks all across the world. But if I were to give you some examples of national parks in India, Kaziranga National Park is one of the most popular national parks which is located in Assam, which is home to the one horned rhinoceros, making it a global stronghold for the species. Now, in Karnataka, we have the Bandipur National Park, which is home to a large population of tigers and Asian elephants, amongst other animals like leopards and gaur. But India's oldest national park is the Jim Corbett National Park, which was set up way back in 1936 in Uttarakhand. It's one of the best places to spot tigers. And the Gir National Park is located in Gujarat, which was established to protect Asiatic lions amongst other organisms. But what exactly does a national park do? You see, national parks are protected areas, and inside a national park, there are certain rules. For example, animals cannot be hunted within an area of a national park. Trees cannot be cut down in this region, and industries cannot be set up or operated. And even with respect to activities that can happen within this, only certain limited activities can take place based on the discretion of the chief wildlife warden. So these parks that are there are established to protect India's incredible wildlife and thousands of plant species. But they aren't the only protected areas we have. We also see that there are wildlife sanctuaries which are established. Now, what are wildlife sanctuaries and how are they different from national parks? Now, in wildlife sanctuaries, the primary focus is to protect animals in their habitat. So, hunting, capturing, and poaching of animals is banned entirely. We see that in wildlife sanctuaries, some human activities may be allowed. And it also opens up a habitat for animals which are injured or abandoned so that they can be rehabilitated. Now, sanctuaries are important places for species that require extra protection, and they also have some breeding programs that helps with increasing the population of animals that are on the brink of being extinct. So, some examples of wildlife sanctuaries in India include the Bhadra Wildlife Sanctuary, which is located in Karnataka. So, with this, we've had a pretty good understanding about animals and the need for protected areas. But now, when you talk about protecting animals, we protect them in their habitat, right? But the question is, do all animals live in one place? I mean, when you think about it, the answer is sort of yes, right? Because when you talk about animals, they have their habitats and they sort of adapted to live there. But what if this habitat where they are living is unfavorable for the animal? So let's say we take an example, right? So let's take an example of a Siberian crane, which comes from the region in Russia. Now, the Siberian crane comes from central Serbia And during the winters, it can be really cold, where the temperatures go down all the way to -10 and -25 degrees. Now, this is not really favorable for an organism to survive, which is why, in order to escape the freezing Russian winter, they fly thousands of kilometers to India and land in the western parts of India, where it's relatively cooler. Now, this entire process where they're escaping their habitat for a brief period of time because it was unfavorable to them, we understand this as migration. So, what is migration? It is a behavior in which animals move from one location to another in a seasonal pattern. And why do they migrate? There are a couple of reasons. One, of course, is when seasons change, right? When seasons change, food can become scarce. So, animals can migrate to places where there's more food. Or some animals also travel to specific regions in order to reproduce, and some of them escape so because they cannot survive the extreme temperatures. So they migrate to warmer climates in the winter. So let's look at all of these with some examples. Now, one of the best examples that I can give you for animals migrating in search of food is the Great Migration that happens in Africa. Imagine this. You're standing on a huge grassland in Africa, and suddenly the ground starts to rumble. Not because there's an earthquake, but millions of animals are on the move. Now, this is what we call as the Great Migration. And why do they travel? It's basically like a giant road trip for food and water. Because when the rain falls, new grass starts to grow, and wild beasts, zebras, gazelles all follow it. Every year, they follow the same circular path across the Serengeti in Tanzania and Masai Mara in Kenya. And it's one of the most predictable, yet one of the most spectacular wildlife journeys that happens on Earth. Yet another magnificent journey that takes place is done by the salmon. Now, salmon are fishes which are born in freshwater rivers. But once they grow up, they swim all the way to the oceans. But when it's time for them to lay eggs and breed, they do a reverse journey where they swim back sometimes hundreds and thousands of kilometers back to the river where they were born. And there they breed and they reproduce and make more of themselves. But how does a salmon know where to go from the ocean to the river? Well, some scientists think that the Earth's magnetic field and even the smell of their home stream actually guides them. And of course, in when we talk about escaping harsh weather, Siberian cranes are the best examples that I can give you. But here's the sad part. They haven't actually been in India since 2002. For decades, these beautiful white cranes used to fly thousands of kilometers to spend winter in India. But over the past years, the numbers have kept dropping considerably. Why so? Well, you see, over a period of time, right, migration routes have gotten affected. Because although protected areas have been established, there are still regions where trees are being cut, where there are wetlands which are shrinking, urban areas expanding. So it's not just about losing space, right? All these changes can confuse the navigation systems that these animals use in order to migrate. Now, normally, all the animals or species that migrate, they rely on things like temperature, daylight, magnetic fields, and food patterns so that they know when to migrate and where to migrate. But when the climate shifts, or when seasons become unpredictable, or when habitats start to disappear, all of these signals start to get affected. So they either end up migrating too early or they go to the wrong place, right? And this affects migration route. So with this, I hope that you have had a basic understanding about what is the need for having protected areas like national parks and wildlife sanctuaries and the importance of migration.